All right, so I'm going to ask first, thank you very much, Jeff. That's absolutely fabulous. I'd like to ask the panelists to come up to the table. I think what you've heard so far from Jeff is a lot of urgency. You've heard a lot about partnerships and doing things differently, breaking past existing molds. A real focus on school-based management, focus on teachers and folks who are actually in the schools rather than the central office, and also providing a strong district frame, that is, a framing of where the district is to head. Now, that is sort of where we are in terms of the conversation. I'm not going to introduce each and every one of the panelists. You have a piece of paper in front of you. What I'm going to ask is, each of the panelists to give a few comments on what they heard, and take maybe about 5 or 6 minutes and kind of give a reaction to what you heard from Jeff, and also just some general comments about school reform in our larger urban districts. And Charlie, if I might start with you, if that's all right.
Okay, do we stand up?
If you'd like to, go ahead.
I like to talk standing up. Maybe because I started out as a preacher. 25 years ago, I was spending one day a week in Lawrence when I was at the state in charge of urban education. Lawrence was at that time one of our districts that we were extremely concerned about. I provided the funding for the Arlington and Cross schools and so forth. And then I had the occasion to go back 18 months ago as part of the Massachusetts State Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. We held a hearing in Lawrence to try to get at the question of why the Commonwealth was failing so badly in meeting the needs of language minority, particularly Latino pupils. We held hearings in Lawrence and Holyoke, and we're told lots of things that were being done, but we're not told what was going to make a difference, which is why I was excited to hear Jeff's account of what he and others are up to. About 20 years ago, I'm obviously in a reminiscent mood these days. This is anecdotage, my children tell me. I was down at the World Bank to speak, I think, on language policy around the world. And at the question and answer period, someone asked me, is school choice a good thing or a bad thing? And I said, yes. That is, it's either a good thing or a bad thing depending upon how you organize it, depending on the framework within which you put it. And that's what I'm hearing again in this presentation about Lawrence, an effort to ensure that the framework within which choices are exercised, the framework within which autonomy at the school level functions is the appropriate one. In 2000, a Belgian colleague and I brought out a book with chapters on 25 different countries in 2 volumes called Balancing Freedom, Autonomy, and Accountability in Education. And we're just this fall bringing out the 3rd edition, which now will be in 4 volumes, 60 different countries, each of them written by experts from the countries, how each of these countries is trying to achieve that balance between the freedom of parents to make decisions about their children, the most important decision most of us will ever make, the freedom of educators to create schools that have a clear and distinctive mission and focus as a part of a team that has a shared vision, and at the same time external accountability to ensure that every child receives an education which is effective. Obviously, the purpose of this book, the series of books that we're doing, is to try to say, how do different countries try to achieve this combination, not going all the way toward school choice, let's say, not going all the way to regulation, not going all the way to everybody doing his own thing, but finding a balance among these. And so we will watch with enormous interest how Jeff and others manage to achieve that balance. There's an article in this week, Education Week, I guess it's this week unless a new one's just come, on portfolio school systems, New York City and other school systems that are trying that trick of creating systems in which the central office becomes the support system, not the decision-making locus. The support system for a mix of charter schools and district schools and other kinds of options, which together are each in a way that is determined at the school level, as Jeff said, which together are seeking to find effective ways of educating. That's what I heard this morning, and I think it gives us a very exciting prospect.
Yeah, no, I'll come up. Good morning, folks. I'm Tom Gosnell, president of the American Federation of Teachers in Massachusetts. Lawrence is one of our locals. Let me give you a little background of Tom Gosnell so you'll understand what's influenced me. I grew up in Dorchester. I went to the Boston Public Schools from kindergarten through the 6th grade. I got an absolutely wonderful education at the Sarah Greenwood Elementary School in Dorchester. I then went to parochial school for 2 years. For high school, I went to BC High, and I'm a graduate of Boston College and Rutgers University, which is the State University of New Jersey. I then taught Latin in the Boston Public Schools for 15 years. I started at Brighton High School, and after 4 years moved over to Girls Latin School, which when it went co-ed, became Boston Latin Academy. In '79, I became a full-time union official, and I have been doing that since 1979. I am still on the active rolls as a Latin teacher in Boston. I have one son who went through the Winchester Public Schools. And upon graduation from the Winchester Public Schools, my wife and I believed that he needed another year of schooling before he went off to college, and he managed to get into Phillips Exeter Academy. I will tell you quite frankly, in his 1 year there, I learned far more than he learned. And I will tie that in to what I have to say. I will say that we want to be as cooperative as possible with Jeff Riley. When I say we, I'm talking about the Lawrence Teachers Union and the American Federation of Teachers. We want a collaborative relationship. I very much liked his emphasis on the importance of teachers and how teachers are so important in the achievement and education of our children. So we are very, very committed to that. But I really want to emphasize one thing here today, and that's poverty. The governor's report on education has this very pithy sentence: poverty is pernicious. It's true. It is absolutely true. The governor's report calls for wraparound services. Wraparound services means good dental care, good medical care, good housing, good nutrition. All those are absolutely vital for the children in Lawrence and, frankly, in every community. Now, wraparound services require resources. Believe me, it is no joke when someone says it takes a community to educate, to raise a child. And that is true. And the community is not just Lawrence. It's every single one of us. Those who live in upper middle income communities like Winchester, or upper income communities like Weston. We are all part of education for the children in Lawrence. When my son was at Phillips Exeter, do you know how many students, the maximum number of students there were in each class? 12. 12. And these are privileged kids. Privileged beyond belief. Can you imagine what we could provide to students in Lawrence if there are only 12 students in a class? The kind of attention that we could give them. There are many students like Teddy up in Lawrence that need that sort of attention, that need those wraparound services. So all the things that we talk about up here, which are wonderful, absolutely wonderful, it should be just what a school system is doing. But it is more than that. It is the whole child. And believe me, it does take a community to raise a child and educate a child. The children in Lawrence deserve exactly what the children at Phillips Exeter Academy receive. Thank you.
It's an interesting new experience for me to be the charter school operator coming after the union person as I enter into the world of running a union school up in Lawrence. I'm Beth Anderson, and I'm the founder of the Phoenix Charter Academy network of schools now. We have one school in Chelsea that has been running now 7 years, and we have applied for a charter for a charter high school in Springfield, Massachusetts, and we are so inspired to be asked to join the city of Lawrence in starting, I think, the Commonwealth's first in-district brand new school, alternative high school, run by a Commonwealth charter operator. No small feat, but we're excited for the challenge. Jeff kind of stole my thunder a little bit in talking about the Boston Magazine article. I have to too, just because it really dovetails with what I feel about Phoenix Charter Academy in Chelsea and will about Phoenix Academy in Lawrence. So they did call Lawrence the city of the damned in the spring article, and the title alone brought me back to the beginnings of PCA in terms of how adults think about particularly older youth in urban areas, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. That and several school visits that I've been fortunate to have over the last spring in Lawrence were enough to prompt us to join Jeff in sharing the vision for change as he partners with students, parents, and educators in Lawrence to transform schools into something that can work for them and put graduates in jobs and with every student possible in Lawrence into college. And that's why we're there. We had the idea for the Phoenix model in the late 1990s. We asked the question, what happens if you take all the high school age students for whom traditional schools, large district schools, or failing high schools haven't worked out and give them a high quality, at the time, public charter high school? But what if they dropped out? What if they couldn't yet speak English and they were 17 years old? What if they just moved here from Haiti 3 weeks ago? What if they're 4 reading levels behind? What if they've been in lockup? Could we do that? Could charter law hold those students? Could anybody hold those students and help them to succeed into college? We tried to open the school in Lynn, and true to our name, on the second try, we were able to successfully open it in Chelsea in 2006. Folks said at that time that we couldn't and we shouldn't do it. So we know a little bit also about wincing, and I certainly got a lot of winces when people were like, oh wow, you're opening a school in Chelsea, or you're gonna start an alternative high school. There's a lot of this wincing going on in the Commonwealth, and I thought we were sort of a strong stock. They said, these kids are already so far behind, they won't come to school. Get them in middle school. You got to get them there. High school is a lost cause, school of the damned. Policymakers said it can't be done. Research shows, I love the research shows, and I'm talking to researchers and I know that, no disrespect. Research shows that high school students can't recover those reading losses. They can't read, they can't do it. From second grade on, they won't be able to succeed in college. Don't do it, don't waste your time. Legislators said we couldn't do it. In 2003, one legislator took me to a North Shore diner, bought me a really big, nice breakfast, and said, Beth, we'll let you take over an alternative school. There's tons of alternative schools. You can have one. Pick which one do you want? Don't do this charter school thing. It's too contentious. It's too hard for Massachusetts. I mean, and this was 2003. Look what's happening with that guy and that whole KIPP thing up in Lynn. You know that sucker's going to crash and burn. Don't even try it. Even a pretty visionary charter school leader of one of the Boston schools who cares about me said, Beth, 19-year-old men in school uniforms, social workers, probation officers, 16-year-old freshmen in a daycare center in the middle of the school, it's too damn hard. How are we going to do that? So what did we do? Well, we did what Jeff is doing in Lawrence. We did what Sheila Balboni and Scott Given and Ralph Carrero and Match and all the other folks and the district folks and the teachers that have been succeeding at the schools that are succeeding in Lawrence have been doing for years. We just did it. We just did it. Kids in Lawrence have never been damned. They just need adults to put them at the center of great schools and the freedom to hold a relentlessly high standard. We are humbled and excited to be part of this effort. And we've hired 17 bold revolutionary educators from places like Teach for America across the country, the Match Teacher Residency Program, and the City of Lawrence to lead the effort starting on August 27th. So let's talk about kids in Lawrence. There's 270 students right now on a list of students that dropped out in the 2010-11 school year. Let's say for argument's sake that 70 of them get GEDs, which I actually think is pretty generous, statistically speaking. And so now we've got 200 that have dropped out. In irregular non-receiver circumstances, those students would be gone. They're not coming back to the schools. Given that every dropout in Massachusetts represents about $300,000 worth of lifetime lost earnings, that's a total of $60 million for the city of Lawrence, for those kids that will probably stay in Lawrence, but are not going to be able to succeed there. This is a huge economic problem for cities that want to recover and change. Jeff is very concerned about this number, this year's dropouts, and the effect it's going to have on the entire city that is depending on its youth to success and ground Lawrence in some significant economic change. So he's charged us, the Phoenix Network, to grow Phoenix Lawrence and change that trajectory for a small but hopefully growing group of students. So what do those students look like? Well, in Chelsea, we've been able to bring 68% of our kids back into school having dropped out or been significantly truant. We define that as going to school less than 2 days a week. We've reached out to smaller cohorts within that big group and then outside that big group, so kids that are going to school but not doing well, 20% English language learners, most of them older students, and 20% court-involved youth, and another about 10 to 15 that are teenage parents that come to school with their children, put their children in the child care center at our school in Chelsea, and it will be in our school in Lawrence, and then go to school as the scholars that they are, similar to many women and men do every day in this room. And then we also reach out to students that are showing the signs of failure in 8th grade. So 15 and 16-year-old 8th graders. That should not happen. We need to bring them into a high school environment that matches where they are developmentally and give them a high-quality education and help them catch up. We've been charged to find them, work with the district to create a system of enrolling them back into school, whether at Phoenix Lawrence or another high school option in Lawrence, and proudly watch them earn their way onto the graduation stage and enter college, regardless of their life circumstances or academic resume. And we've got to do it with the district, and we've got to do it without a charter, and we've got to do it using the Phoenix model. And it needs to be as successful as our Chelsea school. So why Phoenix? Well, first, to be honest, I've wanted to get to Lawrence for years. A year ago, I actually went up and talked to the mayor of Lawrence and his team about whether and if charters were allowed to come to Lawrence, whether or not we could come to Lawrence. The similarities in the two cities are pretty big. I think there's about 50,000 people stuffed into 2 square miles in Chelsea. And I think there's about 80,000 in Lawrence with just shy of 7 square miles. Actually surprised me, that similarity between the two cities. It's a vibrant, diverse community packed with nonprofit organizations and community groups and other folks wanting to make radical change. I think most of you in the room probably know the strikes that have happened over the years. That's an incredible history to walk into when people want to come together and make change. And we're at the beginning of another one, maybe in a different way. And then there's similar challenges in Lawrence as well to match up with those opportunities and that vibrancy. There's a high teen birth rate in Lawrence, high poverty, low graduation rates, and high numbers of students, as I mentioned before, leaving school before they should, and before the community that desperately needs them to stay in will be able to do something about it. We want to change that. The second reason is because of our mission. We're not unique in terms of what we do when you sort of like deconstruct what it is. We have people that love kids. They come together. They work really hard. We hold very, very high standards. And we reach out in a relentless way. I mean, the students call us stalkers and harassers and then cry and thank us at graduation. But it's typical for charter schools. We're not different in that way. What's different about the school is that we take that greatness that's so endemic to organizations, great organizations that work with kids on the street, and we're matching it with relentlessly high standards. You know, if great district schools in Boston and great charter schools in Boston can hold a high bar for 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds, why can't we do that for 16-year-olds and 19-year-olds in Lawrence? Because everybody wants to succeed, and I have never seen a student that said to me, I don't want to come to school, I don't want to be successful, I don't want to have a viable economic life. That does not happen. Every kid, I don't care how old they are, wants to feel successful. And our mission allows us to do that. The third is that we've had some good results. We're not perfect, we've got some things to work on, but we're showing some good gains, and Lawrence has taken a chance on us to see if we can replicate that. At our Chelsea school, or else I'll start with the district, sort of the district MCAS scores for those of you that don't know right now. We're trying to beat 31% proficiency and advance rate in mathematics and 48% in ELA. That's for the whole district, not just one school. In the alternative schools, it's about 20% passing in proficiency and advance in math and 30% in English. At Phoenix, last year, because that's the last year I can publicly talk about, 71% of our students reached proficiency or advanced scores in mathematics. We started in 2008, I think, was our first testing year, and that was about 15%, so we've grown 60-odd percentage points, and we're excited. And then in English, it's about 70%, and you can expect those scores, sorry for the Department of Ed people here, but you can expect those scores to go way up this year, I'll just say that. We've graduated 77 students across the stage, and those 77 match the cohorts that I talk about that come into the school. So we really are bringing our mission home in terms of what crosses the stage. So in closing, I just want to thank the former commissioner, David Driscoll, is here, and in 2006, when he chartered us, he called on PCA to be a model of high accountability of alternative schooling for the Commonwealth. And the city of Lawrence and Jeff Riley are giving us the opportunity to do just that, moving beyond Chelsea and doing it in a way that's never been done before. Regardless of the social problems that Lawrence has experienced or is figuring out how to hurdle, high quality education is a game changer for Lawrence youth. It is the thing that will change the city. Let's bring high school in Lawrence back to the place that graduated Robert Frost from Lawrence High School in the late 1800s. There's hundreds of future poets in Lawrence waiting to add their accomplishments to his. Thank you for having me here.
Good morning. My name is Jose Afonso, and I work for Sabas Educational Systems. I'm Director of Business Development, meaning I open up Sabas charter schools around the country. Prior to joining Sabas, I worked in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the charter school office with a couple of secretaries of education and my former boss sitting here in the room, Dave Driscoll. We launched charter schools in the early 90s, and I've been toiling in this field since then. About 10 years ago, Pete Peters and I, Pete Peters, for those of you who don't know, is the founder of Pioneer, hopped in my pickup truck and went around the state meeting with superintendents to promote the Peters Challenge. And the Peters Challenge was a $1 million fund or escrow that we would put together between Pete and Sabas combined. We'd put this $1 million in a bank account, and in return, we would ask the school district to give us their lowest performing charter school. And if we can't beat the district average in 5 years, you keep the $1 million and, we'll walk away and thank you very much. Not a single taker. Yes, we were politely received by superintendents around the state, but not a single taker. The fact is that changing the way public school systems work and changing the mindset, the establishment attitude that only change from within is possible or is the way, is really something we need to change. If we consider education sort of the pathway to individual prosperity and fulfillment of one's life potential, then it really is the civil rights issue of our time. Can't have 50% of a district's students fail, because it basically means that the other 50% are now going to have to sustain through taxes and through all types of assistance the 50% who didn't graduate. That is an unsustainable formula for the country. And Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, and we have to applaud the Secretary and this administration for pointing out that there are 5,000 failing schools around the country. All right, now 5,000 may not seem like a lot in this country, but I bet the figure is probably closer to 10,000, because we know that organizations like departments of education typically like to downplay some of these things. So let's just say it is 5,000. That's what, 2.5 million students in failing schools around the country. It is really an issue that, unless we tackle head on and bring everyone to the table, I think we're not really going to be successful. Now, I'm glad to have heard Jeff Riley's talk this morning, and it was my first time actually listening to Jeff, and I really appreciate the Teddy story. I think that was really heartwarming, because at the end of the day, that's what we're in education for, is to ensure that the Teddys of the world have an opportunity. So what is Sabas's role in this? So we're founded in 1886 in the private school sector as a school for girls, in a place in the world where girls were not allowed to really receive an education, founded by missionaries. We spent up until 1995 strictly in the private school world with schools in 15 countries. We've expanded over the years and now serve approximately 60,000 students around the world. And in the US, we opened the first charter school here in Massachusetts in 1995 in Springfield. And Springfield at the time was really ahead of its time, because the superintendent, Peter Negroni, and the mayor, Bob Markle, back in '95 were at odds with the local teachers union around some collective bargaining discussions. And as a result, they brought in an outside operator. They brought in Sabas after interviewing a number of different education management organizations, and wanted to give us the lowest performing school, but the parents in that school revolted, and so they moved up to the second lowest performing, and those parents were okay with it. So we took that school over in 1995. 450 students, grades K through 7. We've since had 12 graduating classes. We grew by grade level each year. We served 1,574 students in Springfield in that same school, or we've since moved on to a new campus that Sabas built with private money, over $20 million, and at a great risk, incidentally, given that the charter is only for 5 years. So nevertheless, our commitment to that school was great enough that we're willing to take that risk. That school has nearly 3,000 students on the waiting list. We've not only closed the achievement gap, where our Hispanic and African American students are outperforming the state's white students, but for 12 years in a row, 100% of our graduates have been accepted to college. And this last year, they earned $9 million in scholarship money. Now, the economic impact to the families and to that community is obviously great, because of a charter school. And because of this charter school, former mayor went to Wall Street to meet with the bonding agencies, the bond rating agencies, and cited the existence of this charter school as one of its advantages, a competitive edge that gave the district in its bond rating and actually helped the school's bond rating. So charter schools obviously have a huge role to play, but at the end of the day, it's an untapped resource. There's a lot of talent out there, and districts have been slow to embrace charter schools and oftentimes fight them tooth and nail, because ultimately it comes down to an issue of money and power and who has control. I think in Lawrence, under Jeff's plan, I think there's obviously a lot of optimism, and I'm more optimistic now than I was before hearing Jeff. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. I'm just going to start with a couple of questions for the panel. We're going to open it up to the audience. First one's maybe for you, Charlie. It's, you saw Boston University go into Chelsea and try to bring change to Chelsea. A huge undertaking, lots of risk involved there, a lot of lessons drawn from that. Are there any lessons to be taken from that for Lawrence in terms of the kinds of obstacles as well as opportunities that Lawrence may have?
I have to mention, by the way, all 7 of my children went to Boston Public Schools. Well, I think one lesson from the Chelsea experience is one that clearly Jeff understands already. The Chelsea efforts, although ultimately I think very successful and many good results, were very much top-down. They didn't build upon building communities of educators at the school level to identify how they were going to move ahead. And it seems to me that that's the crucial missing element that I was really encouraged to hear is not going to be missing in the Lawrence experience. By the way, one of my doctoral students has worked now for a number of years at the Community Day Charter School, a very successful charter school in Lawrence. And I know that they are very excited again about the partnership with the public school system. And I'd like to salute Carol Johnson here in Boston for again reaching out and saying, you know, rather than being in a situation of antagonism, we can work with the charter schools. We can learn from each other. We can collaborate in the interest of the kids. And I think that really is a very hopeful sign. And what Jeff had to say this morning confirms the importance of that kind of collaborative approach.
Tom, how about from the perspective of your members in Lawrence, a lot of change happening. There are new entrants into the marketplace, if you will, different models being brought to the district. What do you see as the upsides? Let's not ask the hard questions. I mean, what are the rubs? This may be obvious to many of us. But in terms of things your members are excited about, and then if you want to talk a little bit about things they're not excited about, that's okay. But go through the stuff they're excited about.
Well, what I think is absolutely critical is that there be collaboration, that's what is vital. The view is widely held that the most important in-school factor for the achievement of the students is the classroom teacher. If that indeed is the reality, then I think it's important to have classroom teachers as full partners in the decision-making for the educational program that's going to be offered in the school. And I think there's a real opportunity for that in Lawrence. Will we grab a hold of it and run with it? It may be hard to believe, but you know, most school systems throughout the USA are top-down institutions. They are not organizations that really encourage collaboration in the true sense of that word, meaning the teachers have a significant say in what the decisions are that affect their students. So I think right now in Lawrence, there is a real opportunity to move in that direction. Now, as I've watched Lawrence over the years, there's been significant criticism of its political leadership and of its educational leadership. I think there's an extraordinary opportunity right now to go in a totally new direction. But that means a change in the value system.
Beth, Jose, do you want to weigh in on that? And I guess if not, a question I have for both of you is, look, you are both operators that are expanding and have the capacity to expand across the state. And one of our biggest issues in terms of educational challenges is the fact that we have many older industrialized cities that really have a pretty poor track record of improvement over the last 15 years, not anything close to what we want to see. What are the challenges you face as you seek to expand? So if you want to weigh in on Tom's comments first, it's fine.
The only thing that I wanted to go back to, Jim, is just the idea of collaboration. I was a community organizer in Chelsea when it was in receivership and when Boston University was in the school system. And so I agree with Tom that collaboration is a word that's sort of thrown around a lot. That I think when you drill it down, you don't necessarily see a lot of meat on the bones there. I will say that I'm pretty excited about the way that the receivership and the department have reached out into Lawrence to talk to parents, groups of students, teachers, and different constituencies at a level that I didn't see as a community organizer quite at the beginning in Chelsea, although I do think that the partnership was good for Chelsea schools. So I am excited. I don't think that we at Phoenix would be able to be in Lawrence if there wasn't this dedication to partnership, because our school and our recruitment process so depends on that. And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention is that teachers we've met a lot of great Lawrence educators and that are excited actually about the changes that are coming about in Lawrence. There are a lot of teachers that are trying to do great things in Lawrence that are emboldened by this and feel like with great leadership and some structures and support in the schools that they're going to get more support in being great teachers in the classroom. So this can also be a great thing for teachers in Lawrence that are dedicated to the work and have been for some time. In terms of, now you want us to comment on difficulties?
Challenges.
In terms of challenges? I mean, a growth challenge is just making sure that as a brand new network operator, I feel like I blinked in January. We were running one school and the board agreed that we would try to go to Springfield and get a charter, and then we blinked and all of a sudden we needed to start a Lawrence in-district school run by a charter, who knows what that is, no one, in 6 months. So it's daunting. So you have to kind of blink and take a deep breath and maybe have a tiny glass of wine. And then think, you know, how are we going to lay this out? And when you're an independent operator, we don't have 60,000 students, wow. You know, figuring that out is really important. So we're in the land of, you know, figuring out funding and how to grow in 3 years. What do we need? And who do we need on board that we don't have? And sort of taking we've had to take some of our best and brightest from Chelsea to make sure they can ground the effort in Lawrence so that we keep that mission solid. So we've been thinking about that. Then what strengths does the Chelsea school have to be able to cover for that? Who's going to lead the Springfield effort? All of these sort of normal growth challenges have been coming up sort of fast and furious. So that's what I think about, because you need to make sure, what we said to the city of Lawrence is that we're going to reach these kids. We're going to get 75 dropouts back into school and put them across the graduation stage. What do we need in place to be able to make good on that?
If I may just add a couple things here. In Detroit, for example, they're thinking no longer about a school system, but a system of schools, where the central office is now acting like a vendor and actually providing services to the schools that choose to receive services from the central office. In New Orleans, we have a wide open marketplace of public schools serving public school students, but acting autonomously from the central office. Without real autonomy at the school site, giving the school leader the ability to manage a budget, to make decisions, to react to the situation on the ground, the ability to hire and fire, and to hold staff accountable. And the ability to really evaluate the performance of staff in a real meaningful, outcome-based way, you really, tying the hands of the people you're asking to achieve, miraculous turnarounds. And so autonomy is really what sets charter schools apart. That is the secret ingredient in the recipe. It is the freedom, the flexibility, the autonomy to make decisions that are necessary at the time without having some central office person who may or may not know exactly what a particular school needs at a particular time, making those decisions. So a decentralized approach with real autonomy and real ability to make change in the hands of a school leader who is committed to the mission. I think we're not really adding the right ingredients to this recipe.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, hate to bring in anything out of research after what we've heard about research. And actually, I don't do research. I never took the statistics course. But Ludger Wussmann, who is one of the leading education researchers in the world now, has brought out a very significant study looking at 56 nations and what factors help to explain the relative success of their education systems, holding constant the social class and educational background of the families and all the other factors that you would look at. And he finds that, yes, as Jose says, autonomy of schools is a crucially important factor, provided that there's one other thing, and that is external accountability for results. It's the balance between those two, the combination of external accountability, which is a direction in which we're going very strongly right now in Massachusetts and the United States, fortunately, and autonomy at the school level. It's when those are in combination that we have the most positive results. Autonomy by itself without external accountability often encourages people at the school level to do their own thing, to do whatever they enjoy or whatever makes life easiest for themselves. So you need the balance of both. One reason charter schools in Massachusetts have been very successful compared with charter schools in a number of other states is that they operate within a clear context of accountability, which ensures that in fact they are serving pupils well, or else they go out of business. And that's precisely the combination that we need to achieve, and that I'm hopeful Jeff will achieve in Lawrence.
Any other comments?
I just want to quickly, talking about autonomies, and I think there's a lot of people that are wondering what kinds of autonomies the schools, the outside operators have under the receivership. So I just want to name a few things that we've agreed upon, which might help people understand that more. So Phoenix Lawrence will have the ability to control for the school day and the school year. That's 190 days during the school year plus some summer work. We've also negotiated that if we want to add some weekend work in different ways in the future, we can do that. And it's a 9 to 5 school day with teachers working on the outsides of those. We have the ability to hire and hire great people, any great people we want. I've had no micromanagement from the district or Jeff around who we've hired. And for Phoenix, that's pretty significant because we hire some very out-of-the-box kind of folks that make this place sing. So that's a great thing. And I have the freedom to dismiss folks that aren't working for whatever reason. There's a certain process to follow for that, but we have that ability at the Lawrence School. We negotiated the ability to control for the policies and practices that are the foundation of our mission and make the place work and make us reach those external accountability goals that are so critical, which I agree with. And then we have been given a facility that's going to work in the first year for our school, and the agreement to move into a longer-term facility at the end of this year, which Phoenix agreed to. We've had that lock in the charter school world, so it's not quite different in the district world. It is nice not having to pay the bill for the building. So we have negotiated these things with the district, and that we feel we can build a great school on top of these things. Again, we'll test us in a year, but we think we can get there.